Good news everyone, here is a video that will take a closer look at channel and inventory management. In this video, we will explore options to effectively optimize revenues in various demand conditions. An important part of maximizing revenue effectively is to control demand. We accomplish this through channel and inventory management. The key is to be proactive in your inventory and channel controls rather than reactive. There are two main strategic levers that revenue managers work with: price and duration. Revenue managers are able to increase price and restrict discounts over high demand periods, or conversely, lower price and open all discounts during low demand periods. Before our industry had dynamic value-based pricing and market segmentations, hotels used mainly duration to manage inventory. Revenue managers look at the total guest worth over the entire length of the guest stay. The techniques used to manage duration are referred to as stay controls. Here are 8 types of stay controls used by hotel revenue managers to manage inventory and optimize revenue. In this video, we will focus on maximum length of stay, minimum length of stay, and close to arrival. Let's quickly review the other tools available. Let's begin with open, or also known as open for sale. This is when there are no restrictions in place and our inventory is wide open. Closed is also known as a hard close. This is when our inventory is not made available and no one can book, regardless of the price or the number of nights the guest is willing and able to pay or stay. There are absolutely no reservations that are accepted. Let's look at no departure, also known as closed to departure. This is where guests checking out on a specific date are prevented from doing so. Only reservations that are staying through the closed to departure date would be accepted. The stay control is particularly useful when wanting to restrict the number of guests checking out on a specific day. This book defines full pattern length of stay restriction as a restriction that allows a guest to stay 1, 2, 4, or 7 nights, but not for 3, 5, or 6 nights. This restriction is commonly used to allow a hotel to accept discount rates up to a peak period. For example, 2 and 3 length of stays are allowed at a discounted rate. However, the discounted rate will remain closed for that. Lastly, there are allocation controls. When using allocation, we do just that. We allot a specific number of rooms to be sold at certain rate categories. For instance, often we want to limit the number of discounts we wish to accept on a given day. To do so, we may allot only 15% of our available inventory to discounted rate categories, such as qualified rates like seniors, CAA, and advanced purchase. We have now covered a good variety of stay controls. Let's focus on the 3 most commonly used approaches to controlling demand and managing our inventory. The first is setting a minimum length of stay, the second, setting a maximum length of stay, and third, closing a date to arrivals. When do we use minimum length of stay? Minimum length of stay is used when there are periods of high demand followed by a period of low demand. Essentially, we implement a rule to accept longer duration reservations while turning away shorter duration reservations that are due to arrive over a peak period. The goal of a minimum length of stay is to control demand during the peak times while increasing occupancy during the slow periods that follow. A potential problem that we may run into is we may not have anybody that wants to stay longer than the minimum requirement that we've set in mind. Also, our guests may decide to leave early. A maximum length of stay is used when you're expecting to be able to sell out your rooms at higher rates. We use maximum length of stay to limit the number of rooms we sell at deep discounts during the high rate time period by limiting the discounted multi-night stays extending into that specified time period. So how do we make this happen? Well, we put a control whereby we do not accept reservations at a specific discounted rate for multiple night stays extending into the sold-out period. For instance, only allow guests to book the Sizzling Summer Savings Package to a maximum of 4 nights. To accommodate guests who would like to stay at the hotel longer than the maximum length of stay, we can then charge 2 different rates. We can offer them the discount rate for nights up to the maximum, and then the best available rate for all subsequent nights. One potential problem of implementing a maximum length of stay is your guests may decide to stay longer. You may upset guests by turning them away at the discounted rate. Perceived fairness in revenue management research completed by Cheryl Kimes shows that educating the guest on why the discount is closed helps them understand why the rate is higher on the additional dates they wish to stay, thus increasing perceived fairness in revenue management practices. For the maximum length of stay to increase your RevPAR, you have to be confident in your demand forecast and ensure that you do in fact have high demand. Otherwise, you could decrease your RevPAR instead of improving it. Let's walk over to close to arrival. This control can be used to restrict arrivals during a time when you expect to reach maximum occupancy through guests staying at the hotel for multiple nights. The idea is to increase the number of guests staying through, also known as stayovers, as opposed to through new arrivals. Using this control would most make sense if you believed you could achieve higher occupancy by selecting a particular set of guests. For example, only those arriving before the close to arrival date. So what would we need to do to make the restriction happen? Essentially, we do not accept reservations for arrivals on the day in question, only allow guests staying through from previous nights only. Here is an example demand forecast. As you may recall, a component of demand forecasting is to forecast unconstrained demand. This property has a maximum capacity, or inventory, of 50 rooms. Without any restrictions or restraints in place, we can see the projected forecast exceeds our supply over the dates of June 30th and July the 1st. Let's go through each market segment and decide on strategies we can put in place to optimize revenue. First, let's begin with contract. Because we have a contract with Air Canada crew, we are unable to turn them away, even though doing so would allow us to sell 10 rooms at a higher rate on the Friday and Saturday. The long-term relationship is more important than the short-term gain. Next we have group. Looks like we have both the Smurf and group corporate. The shoulder dates for the group corporate fall over the Friday and Saturday. Perhaps the sales manager can communicate to the convener that the negotiated group rate is not available over the weekend. This would free up an additional 5 rooms to sell at a higher rate. In our transient corporate segment, we have LRA and NLRA. LRA stands for last room availability. LRA occurs when a company has a contract that states their travelers can book into the negotiated rate so long as there are rooms available at the property. This prevents the revenue team from being able to implement stay controls and closing out the lower rate over high demand periods. NLRA is not last room availability. These corporate guests can have stay controls imposed on their rates. Typically, corporate does not stay over the weekend. However, because of the demand generator, July the 1st, we see increased demand for the Friday and Saturday. In this instance, we would like to apply stay controls to NLRA to prevent them from staying over. Lastly, we have our transient leisure segment. We can see there is a surge of demand for discounted rate plans. The idea is to impose the length of stay controls we learned about to prevent guests from booking into the lower rates and instead convert more reservations into our bar best available rate plan. What stay restrictions would you implement? By proactively and accurately forecasting demand, we can make decisions as to which controls we'd like to implement to manage our inventory. We are looking to sell the right room to the right guest at the right time through the right channel and at the right cost. The end result is optimized revenues for your business. Thank you for watching.